In the heart of the Western Cape lies a town known for its vibrant student life, large wine estates, and breathtaking views. But beneath this beauty, Stellenbosch holds a powerful group of individuals whose group of companies exert influence over a significant portion of the South African economy. Hi there, I'm Lebogang, and welcome to Mzansibizness. In today's video, we'll be pulling back the curtain on one of South Africa's most talked about elite circles, the Stellenbosch Mafia. Yo, Bafit, this is going to be a hectic one. We're talking about a group whose total market cap between them is over R1 trillion. It's a tale of total dominance, horses worth millions, a beef with the EFF, and just a whole lot of controversy. So without wasting any time, let's jump in. To begin, what is a mafia? A group of people likened to the mafia, especially a group of people of similar interests or backgrounds prominent in a particular field or enterprise. It recalls images of Italian crime families and New York mobsters who intimidate and racketeer their way to illicit riches. What is a Stellenbosch Mafia? Who is a Stellenbosch Mafia? Where does the name originate from? And is this an actual thing? Lucky for you guys, you got me, so I'll break it down. The Stellenbosch Mafia have been described as a group of influential, white Afrikaner businessmen who use their clout informally to steer the economy and pull the strings of government to their favor from the secluded Stellenbosch town. The origins of the name can be traced to early 2003. At this time, it was used more as a term of referring to a select group of Stellenbosch businessmen, but the term now has more of a negative connotation to it after gaining mainstream attention from criticism from the EFF's Julius Malema and during the whole Gupta state capture saga, which I have a full video on right here. So, who is in this group? The media prominently place Rupert at the head of this group, the richest man in the country with an estimated net worth put at a staggering $11.8 billion. He controls Remgro, Richmond and Remit investments, but we'll get into all of that. Then we have GT Ferreira, an investor and banker who's one of the founders of Firstrand Limited, holding company of FNB and a number of other financial institutions. Yanni Mouton, founder of PSG and co-founder of Capitec Bank. Capitec's other co-founder Michiel, Roux, fifth richest man in the country, also mentioned as part of this bunch. Dr. Edwin Hestok, a medical doctor and co-founder of Mediclinic. And finally, we probably have the most controversial of them all, Markus Jooste of Steinhoff. But Steinhoff only moved its headquarters to Stellenbosch at a later stage, and only from then started becoming more affiliated with some of the other listed members. This video will just focus on the names I just mentioned, but others that are lumped in with this group is Koos Becker, third richest man in the country, of Naspers that owns DSTV, Christo Vase of Pepcor. Although he never lived in Stellenbosch, he completed his law degree at the university and maintains a strong connection with the town through the various boards on which he used to hold directorship, as well as Paul Harris, the former CEO of FNB. Is this an actual thing? Do these brews actually sit down and plot on how to manipulate the South African economy and so forth to its favor? Rupert and the other so-called members constantly distance themselves from the term, and to be fair, it's not like an official thing, like, yeah guys, we the Stellenbosch Mafia. Nah, just a network of wealthy individuals whose group of companies assert influence over a significant part of the South African economy, and all with ties to Stellenbosch in some way. Most of them weren't even close to Markus Jooste and, quite frankly, had doubts about his extravagant lifestyle. But there's certain things that gaslight this whole Stellenbosch Mafia controversy. Let's do a quick breakdown on these individuals and their respective companies, and we will get an idea of how these companies are linked. In the early 20th century, Afrikaners controlled or managed no major industrial enterprise, no commercial bank or company on the JSE, even though they had come to dominate in the South African political space. So naturally, they'll come up with ways to rectify this. And in 1915, Nationale Pers was formed, now Naspers, who owned MultiChoice, but back then it was a newspaper publication company that's main aim was to promote Afrikaner ideology. In 1918, insurance company Santam was founded and Sanlam followed shortly after. Both companies marketed themselves as genuine Afrikaner people's institutions, as you can see what the abbreviations stand for. Another Afrikaner company, KWV was also established. Later on, they would move into the management of public-owned enterprises, including the Iron and Steel Corporation, ISCOR, and as well as Electricity Supply Commission, ESCOM. The Afrikaners also wanted to form their own bank, and Volkskas was established in 1933, which over the years has merged into a bank we know as ABSA. In the early 1940s, the banks extended a loan to Anton Rupert to establish Firstrand Tobacco Company. This company would merge into Rembrandt and eventually today's Remgro, and that's how the Ruperts come into the picture. Firstrand Tobacco Company was formed in the early 1940s after purchasing a bankrupt tobacco company in Paarl, known as Firstrand, and would continue to operate under this Firstrand name for the first couple of years. They expand into the liquor industry with the formation of Distillers Corp in 1942, which listed on the JSE in 1945, becoming the first Afrikaner company to do so. Distillers would produce some of SA's most iconic brandies, including Ordermeister and Richelieu, as well as a highly successful Amarula. And guys, Savannah, Hunter's Dry, it all comes from this Distillers company. It would merge with Stellenbosch Farmers Winery in 2000, becoming Distil. Distil today has merged into Heineken Beverages South Africa, on which I have a video coming on very soon. 1946, Rembrandt Tobacco Manufacturing Corporation is established. Its main aim was to house all of the group's tobacco and liquor interests. So pretty much to have Firstrand and Distillers under one company. By 1948, Rembrandt would start producing its own cigarettes, and Anton Rupert would also meet a man known as Sidney Rothmans from the huge London company Rothmans of Pall Mall, and secured the rights to manufacture and sell Rothmans products. By 1953, Rembrandt had purchased a majority stake in Rothmans International, with the funding from Afrikaner companies Sanlam and Volkskas, making it a player in the international cigarette market. Rothmans International has since merged into a company known as British American Tobacco. 1956, Rembrandt would launch its international flagship Gwai, the Peter Stuyvesant brand. 1958, Rembrandt do another big acquisition when it took control of established manufacturer Carreras, owner of the Dunhill brand of luxury goods, including the cigarette brand. 1979, Johan Rupert, son of Anton Rupert, forms Rand Merchant Bank in Johannesburg after returning from a stint in international banking. 1984, 5 years after forming Rand Merchant Bank merged with a company known as Rand Consolidated Investments, forming Rand Merchant Bank Holding. Johan Rupert would also leave the company to join his father's Rembrandt Group, but would remain a majority stakeholder in RMB Holdings. 1989, Johan Rupert joins Rembrandt's board and even becomes the chairperson in 1991. Shortly after that, he established Richemont. Pretty much this Richemont company consolidated the Rupert family's international interests under one company. So the European luxury icons such as Cartier, Montblanc, and Alfred Dunhill. He was even apparently confronted by Cyril Ramaphosa in 1990 about Richemont, because it was at a time the political and economic climate in South Africa was very shaky. Johan Rupert told Ramaphosa that he was just protecting the assets of the company's stakeholders and that no money has left the country. Rembrandt would not only have its South African interest under it and would also invest in Vodacom around that time. In 2000, Rembrandt becomes Remgro, derived from the terms Rembrandt and Group. It will establish a new listed company, Venfin, which has been described as very secretive, but this company would look after its telecommunications and technology interests. They'll sell a majority stake in this company to Vodafone, as Vodafone was buying back more of Vodacom shares. 2008, the family would also form Renit Investments, set up to house the group's tobacco businesses. 2018, a Remgro subsidiary bought a 35% share in Vumatel, one of the country's fastest growing data fiber providers. And through its subsidiary Remgro Sport Investment, Remgro held a 50% stake in the English Premiership rugby club Saracens for 10 years, as well as owning a 50% stake in the Blue Bulls rugby team. It also invested in the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport, a multi-million rand high-performance sports center used by some of the country's top sportsmen and women, and provides a permanent base for the Springboks Sevens rugby team. They would also purchase the first division soccer club Stellenbosch United in 2018. Remgro would also have stakes in a company known as RCL Foods, which owns brands such as Rainbow Chicken, Salati Sugar, amongst others. Remgro also has stakes in E-Media that own ENCA, leading some to believe the media is whitewashed. Please note, this is far from all of Rupert's investments. I'll sometime in the future do a full video on this family though. The Ruperts though were able to build its empire through its ties to South African heads of government and states and their networks. Anton Rupert was part of the elite in the 1940s when political power shifted to Afrikaner nationalism. His original business partners all connected and politically influenced. One man he started Rembrandt with, Nico Dedricks, later became state president. It is said that Johan Rupert played golf with F.W. de Klerk, and there's evidence of at least one payment of 20,000 from the Ruperts to the National Party. It is said that Nelson Mandela even saw a friend in Anton Rupert and once advised his finance minister Trevor Manuel to consult Rupert to help the country find a way out of the economic dead end it had found itself in. The Ruperts also have ties to Cyril Ramaphosa. He serves on the board of the Peace Parks Foundation, as did Nelson Mandela. Rupert over the years has been highly critical of the ANC. In 2015, shortly after Zuma fired Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene, Rupert publicly declared that Zuma must go for the sake of our children. This came after Zuma said at a meeting of top ANC members that Rupert had flown from London to cook up a plot for Pravin Gordhan to return to the National Treasury, which did interestingly happen for a short while. There were chats that Deputy President at the time, Cyril Ramaphosa, met with Johan Rupert, Maria Ramos of ABSA, Trevor Manuel, who was Minister in the Presidency at the time, after the appointment of Des van Rooyen and the subsequent appointment of Pravin Gordhan as Minister of Finance. All these allegations are aggressively denied by all parties mentioned. He was also critical of the phrase radical economic transformation, saying it's a code word for theft, which led to him receiving a lot of backlash. Maybe, just maybe, Mynheer Rupert had a point. We all know how the ANC has been plagued with corruption scandals. But he's just not the right person to deliver the message, as his family legacy was built off the policies that excluded Africans from economic participation. In 2021, Rupert allegedly summoned Ramaphosa, former Deputy Finance Minister Mcebisi Jonas, and Old Mutual Chairman Trevor Manuel, and told them that if ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule is not removed by the Executive Committee of the ANC, then support for Ramaphosa and funding for the ANC will be stopped immediately. Apparently, Rupert even set up a call between Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa shortly after Trump was elected US President for the second time, so that the two presidents can build relations. Okay, let's talk about Rupert's Rand Merchant Bank. We know that it merged with Rand Consolidated Investments, right? Forming RMB Holdings in 1984. Founders of the company that it merged with, Rand Consolidated Investments, include Gerrit Thomas Ferreira, or also known as GT Ferreira, and Paul Harris, two members of the so-called Stellenbosch Mafia. RMB acquired a majority stake in Momentum Life in 1992 and would also form Discovery Limited as a subsidiary of Momentum Life. 1998, RMB Holdings would merge again with Anglo American's financial services interests that had a bank known as FNB and West Bank under it, forming the company Firstrand, as well as listing on the JSE. They would also form the Outsurance Company that year. 2010, Firstrand Company Momentum merged with Metropolitan Holdings, forming MMI Holdings. And the following year, 2011, Firstrand would put all its insurance companies under a new company known as RMI, Rand Merchant Investments, listing that company on the JSE as well. Firstrand will now only have its banking divisions under it. The company also have investments in property through a company known as Rand Merchant Holdings Property. This company even have a stake in a company known as Atterbury, a developer of prime commercial, retail, and industrial property across South Africa that includes Mall of Africa. Let's move on to Mediclinic. Formed by Dr. Edwin Hertzog in 1983 with seed capital provided by Rupert's Rembrandt Group, it would list on the JSE in 1986. Today, the company owns and operates 50 hospitals in South Africa and has major interests in the Middle East, Switzerland, and Britain. They went on such a crazy expansion drive and had acquired 25% share of the private healthcare sector that the Competition Commission said no more, that's enough. So they just expanded into the Middle East in 2005 and Switzerland in 2007. It also owns 30% of Spire, the second biggest private healthcare group in Britain. They also own ambulance service ER24 and have stakes in hospital group Intercare. Let's unpack PSG Financial Services. Founded in 1993 by Yanni Mouton, the company today has three operating divisions: PSG Asset Management, PSG Insure, and PSG Wealth. This company invested in Curro private schools in 1998 when it had 3 schools. They now have over 100 schools, and This company provided the capital and infrastructure for Capitec to be born in 2001 and has stakes in a number of other companies. Son of Yanni Mouton, Pete Mouton, would become in charge of this company in 2010 at the age of 32. I want to brag about Naspers now, but only for a bit. Founded in 1915 as a newspaper publication company. Over the years, this company became South Africa's largest publishing company, publishing newspapers, magazines, and books. In the 1980s, Naspers began to diversify by launching a subscription television service, Mnet. Mnet was a brainchild of Koos Bekker. In 1992, Mnet started separating divisions in the company and MultiChoice was born, followed by the launch of DStv in 1995. They would launch Media24 in 2000, set up to house its media interests. This though has led to question marks because if one company owns most of the media publications, wouldn't those publications be more favorable to them? They also made an investment in major Chinese technology company Tencent and have a whole host of other investments. Naspers today is the largest company in South Africa by market cap, with a market cap of over 700 billion rands. And finally guys, Markus, Jooste and Steinhoff. After this, I'll talk about how all these companies are linked. Markus Jooste, a man who studied at University of Stellenbosch, his college residence, Willows, has produced some influential South Africans, including his close friends, Christo Veers, as well as Shoprite's Whitey Basson. He had gone to work at SARS before going to work at furniture company Koma as financial director. A man known as Klaus Dorn would invest in this Koma company and would introduce Markus to a man known as Bruno Steinhoff, owner of the major German furniture company Steinhoff. Somehow, Markus Jooste convinced Bruno Steinhoff to merge Koma and Steinhoff, and another company was established, Steinhoff Retail Africa, with Bruno Steinhoff taking a 35% stake in Koma. Steinhoff became one of the largest manufacturers of furniture on the JSE when it listed in 1998. Bruno Steinhoff would focus on the European divisions and left Markus Jooste to handle all the business in Africa. Little did Bruno know he was making a huge mistake. Steinhoff would go on a rapid expansion drive, acquiring more manufacturing facilities in Germany, Hungary and Poland, entering the British and Australian markets in 2001, establishing a sourcing headquarters in China in 2005, and even took charge of Unitrans in South Africa to be able to control its own transport and logistics functions in the country. A major breakthrough came in 2011 when Steinhoff, which had earned the moniker the IKEA of Africa, bought Conforama, a huge French homeware retailer, bringing another 6 countries into Steinhoff's fold. 2011, Christo Veers sold Lanzerac wine estates to Jooste and a friend of his, Malcolm King, as well as some shares he owned in the PSG Group to Steinhoff. And in 2013, Christo Veers was appointed to Steinhoff's board. 2015, something that is very important to the story happens. Steinhoff would acquire Christo Veers' Pepco that even had the Shoprite Checkers Group under it, expanding Steinhoff's retail capabilities through the addition of another 4,000 retail outlets. Steinhoff is now the second largest integrated household goods retailer by turnover. The deal was worth 63 billion rands, but little did Christo Veers know this was a very terrible decision that he made. Christo Veers received Steinhoff shares for his stake in Pepco, making him the largest shareholder of Steinhoff Africa with about 850 million shares, equivalent to about 20% of the company. So it's important to note that these deals were not done with cash. 2015, the South African Rugby Union announced that Steinhoff would become the main sponsor of the Springbok men's and women's rugby sevens team. Markus Jooste always wanted to be a part of the Stellenbosch set and realized the path to the affluence in Stellenbosch was through rugby. They had already been sponsoring Stellenbosch Rugby since 2006, sponsoring the Stellenbosch University rugby team. Markus Jooste would shortly move the company's headquarters from Johannesburg to Stellenbosch. And then the Steinhoff money started talking. Fancy cars started coming and going to and from the company's head office. Employees snapped up luxury properties in Dozals, an exclusive golf estate just outside the town. And Markus Jooste and his friends even bought a farm in the Jonkershoek Valley. During the 2015 Rugby World Cup in London, Steinhoff took a large party. Some say 60 people, others put the number at close to 100. To London for 3 weeks to attend the tournament. Entertaining guests in style with first-class tickets to London and back, hospitality boxes at the matches, being put up in the 5-star Mayfair Hotel, and a helicopter was put at their disposal to make travel in and out of the city easier. They balled so hard on this trip it apparently cost Steinhoff shareholders in the region of 84 million rands. November 2015, just after this lavish trip to London, German police and prosecutors raided the Steinhoff premises in Germany. Investigators told the German media that Steinhoff was involved in balance sheet fraud to the tune of several hundred million euros. It also said that the company massively overstated sales numbers for years, which had the effect of making the company seem more valuable than it actually was. Steinhoff was somehow even paying less tax than other major businesses in South Africa. In 2013-14, Steinhoff paid just 1.3 billion rands in tax, or 8.1% of its 16.6 billion rands profit that year. Christovasis Pepco paid 1 billion rands in taxes, but get this, its profit was only just 3.3 billion, so that's about 30% of its profit. Imagine, your company makes a whole 3 billion rands and SARS just come through and like, yeah, we'll take 1 billion of that. Standard Bank paid 23.5% in direct taxes, MTN about 26%, and Richemont 21%. It's unclear how Steinhoff were doing this, but it seems they have found loopholes to take advantage of tax incentives legally. In late 2017, German trade publication Manager magazine dropped a bombshell. It claimed that the Jooste Steinhoff empire was built on quicksand. It alleged the company's balance sheets were inflated. It claimed these transactions amounted to hundreds of millions of euros. The scoop sent shockwaves through the industry. Markus Jooste was also one of the country's biggest owner of racehorses and invested millions of rands in the sport. He even had his own horse farm and his horses competed all over the world. Jooste's big break in the sport was when his racehorse became a national champion and horse racing became a big business for him. He would form the company Mayfair Speculators to manage all his racehorse interests. The company would be run by his son-in-law, Stefan Potgieter. Jooste was without a doubt the biggest spender in South African horse racing, dropping a cool 6 million rand for a horse in 2016. Mayfair Speculators paid millions snapping up horses in France and elsewhere, and even going into partnership with horse farms and owners in the US, China and the Middle East. But there have been chats about Markus Jooste's stranglehold on the industry and his mafia style of doing business. News 24 reported in 2018 that the company behind one of the biggest racehorse auctions in the country, Cape Thoroughbred Sales, the biggest seller of horses, Cloverley, which is Markus Jooste's horse farm, and the biggest buyer, Mayfair Speculators, were all essentially the same people, with Markus Jooste basically controlling the entire value chain of horse racing. Some say he had spent 110 million in Australia on horses, and others say that he splashed out 180 million in 1 year. The numbers are just mind-boggling. And if you look at the financials and see what he earned as Steinhoff CEO, it just didn't make sense. In 2016, Steinhoff bought Mattress Firm for $3.8 billion. And this deal raised eyebrows amongst analysts because Steinhoff paid more than double of what Mattress Firm was worth, guys. And this company was over $1 billion in debt, and Steinhoff spent just 5 days doing due diligence before buying this company. So inevitably, December 2017, it all comes crashing down for Steinhoff. 3 December 2017, a few days before Steinhoff Africa was due to announce its financial results, one of Steinhoff's executives, Ben Lagrange, was called to Steinhoff's head office by the chairperson of the board's Audit and Risk Committee. Major accounting firm Deloitte was refusing to sign off on the company's financial statements, expressing concerns of possible fraud. Only one person could really answer for all of this, and it was CEO Markus Jooste. He had been asked to come to the office and explain the alleged irregularities identified in the Deloitte report. Jooste landed in Cape Town in Steinhoff's G550 private jet, but never pitched up to the office as requested. That's when Steinhoff executives realized there was something wrong. 4 December 2017, Steinhoff issued a statement on the JSE's news service saying it would not be releasing financial statements as planned, but would instead release its numbers in unaudited form. The statement didn't reveal too much, but it definitely raised red flags among Steinhoff stakeholders and business analysts. Same day, Jooste sends an SMS to members of the company's supervisory board. The message allegedly contained the words "goodbye" and "I'm sorry." The game was now up. He would send a second SMS to Crystal Vase, stating his intentions to resign as Steinhoff boss. Next day, 5 December, Steinhoff employees opened their inbox to see an email from Jooste pretty much apologizing to them for the mess he had put the company in, as well as to clear his closest associates of any wrongdoing. Ben Lagrange and Danny van der Merwe, members of the board, Stefan Grobler, executive for Treasury and Finance, and Marissa Nel, executive for IT and HR. Lagrange would later be suspended and Grobler alongside him, while Marissa Nel would resign and van der Merwe became interim CEO, but would also later resign. Christo Weiss would plead with Markus Jooste to come back and at least help the company make sense of all the madness, but it was clear Markus Jooste had no intention of returning. By the end of 5 December, Steinhoff's price had fallen by 18% from 55 Rand per share to 45 Rand per share. And later that evening, at about 10:45 p.m., after the close of markets in Johannesburg, Steinhoff announced that Markus Jooste has resigned and that Christo Weiss would temporarily fill his shoes as executive chairperson, but he would also resign about a year later. In addition, the company announced that auditors PwC had been retained to conduct a full investigation into accounting irregularities identified by the Deloitte report, and that it would only release its financial statements once it was in a position to do so. By the time the JSE resumed trading at 9 a.m., it was absolute carnage. Steinhoff's share price tanked by 61% from the previous day's closing price, from about 45 Rand a share to about 16 Rand a share. More than 100 billion of the company's market cap was instantly wiped. Christo Weiss's personal fortune took an enormous hit. He apparently lost $2.3 billion in just 24 hours. The government employee pension fund, whose assets are managed by the Public Investment Corporation (PIC), was identified as the biggest loser. It held 10% of Steinhoff stock, and by the end of the week, the value of its investment, which weeks before was around 20 billion rands, had fallen to just a little over 2 billion rands. Large asset managers in the country were also hit, including Allan Gray, Coronation, Investec, Discovery, and Old Mutual, including pension funds of Eskom and Sasol. Ratings agency Moody's Investors Services downgraded Steinhoff's credit rating by 4 notches to junk, citing uncertainty around the group's liquidity. Its share price dropped as a result by another 40%, closing at 10 Rand. Investigative reports that followed would state executives at the companies for years have been inflating the profit and asset value of the company. Steinhoff booked interest on loans made to its other company as revenue in its statements. The company also disguised losses by moving non-performing loans off the balance sheet, and reports also highlighted Steinhoff's questionable tax schemes. When the JSE closed at the end of the week's trading that Friday, after a week of madness at Steinhoff, the company's share price had fallen from 55 Rand the previous Friday to a measly 6 Rand. 90% down, and 187 billion of its market cap wiped out. Bloomberg reported that Steinhoff's fall cracked open the Stellenbosch Mafia. Meanwhile, the Financial Mail published a cover with a mock-up of the Godfather movie with the headline, The Fall of a Stellenbosch Don. Visa tried to sue Steinhoff in April 2018 for 59 billion in an attempt to undo the Pepco purchase, arguing that he was misled about the true state of the company's financials. Fortunately for him, he managed to recoup about 7 billion rands. It's not close to what he invested in the company, but hey, I guess it's better than nothing. There was all this drama, and the man who caused it all, Markus Jooste, wasn't even there to face the music. There were rumors in the days following his resignation that Jooste was hiding at his horse farm, but it turns out the man was hiding in plain sight. He was spotted in Hermanus having lunch at his favorite restaurant, and he was also seen in and around the Stellenbosch area. September 2018, Markus Jooste made his first public appearance, 10 months after resigning from Steinhoff, when he appeared in front of a joint parliamentary committee in Cape Town. He agreed to talk, but only on condition that Parliament question him on certain things only. He proceeded to admit nothing and deny everything, accompanied by a heavyweight legal team. A couple of years after the crash, there was still no clarity on the state of the Hawks investigation, and there was no action taken against Jooste or anyone else. This made South Africans believe that the rich play the game with a totally different set of rules to ordinary South Africans. But about 7 years after the Steinhoff crash, Ben Lagrange has since been arrested and is currently in prison after pleading guilty to one charge of fraud in the Steinhoff saga. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison with 5 years suspended. Stefan Grobler's trial has been delayed to 2025. Markus Jooste would sadly pass away in March 2024 after taking his own life. His death, though, seems suspicious to many. The day before, Jooste was officially notified that he had to present himself before the Hawks in Pretoria. And on arrival, he would have faced charges of fraud, racketeering, and a contravention of the Financial Markets Act. So, how are all these companies linked? Capitec co-founders Michiel Roux and Rian Stassen started out in the Rembrandt stable, working for Distillers Corp, and then going on to form Capitec with the capital from PSG. So as I already mentioned, Rupert's Remgro, but at the time Rembrandt, provided the funding for Mediclinic and also have stakes in Rand Merchant Holdings. PSG and Steinhoff had shares in each other's companies. Markus, Jooste and Jannie Mouton initially had a solid friendship. Mouton talks about a situation in 2002 when Absa wanted to launch a hostile takeover of his company, PSG. Markus Jooste would start buying PSG shares like mad to ward off the attempted coup, and also persuaded Bruno Steinhoff and GT Ferreira to do the same as well. PSG Jannie Mouton served on Steinhoff board for many years and also had a significant number of shares in the company. The friendship between him and Markus Jooste went bad after Steinhoff acquired a larger stake in PSG through what Jannie Mouton saw as a betrayal. Markus Jooste was somehow able to convince two of Jannie Mouton's close friends to swap their PSG shares for Steinhoff shares, and they did this all allegedly without telling Jannie Mouton. Jannie Mouton was not very happy about this, and in May 2016 sold all his shares in Steinhoff and resigned from his directorship. At its peak, Steinhoff owned 25% of Mouton's PSG. And at a certain point, these guys were also sitting on one another's boards. As previously mentioned, Jannie Mouton on Steinhoff's board, Christo Weiss was also on this board, GT Ferreira on Remgro's board, as well as Firstrand's board. Capitec's other co-founder, Rian Stassen, sits on PSG's board. Remgro's CEO sits on the Mediclinic board, and Dr. Herstog of Mediclinic was on Remgro's board. Paul Harris on Rupert's Remgro and Firstrand boards. These guys' businesses generate enormous amounts of revenue, which many argue give them leverage over society. A food retailer, ShopRite, controls the price of basic goods. Pep can influence what clothes you wear. Mediclinic, a private hospital, decides who receives medical treatment. Naspers having major stakes in media companies, and through Capitec and F&B controlling our money. These are the types of things that fuel this whole Stellenbosch Mafia thing. Something that I feel is worth mentioning is that Capitec co-founder Michiel Roux has been one of the largest donors to the DA, a party that has been running the Western Cape for the past couple of years, typically through his private companies, Fynbos, Equitit, and Fynbos Capital. Between 2021 and 2023, he donated over 50 million rands to the party and remained a major donor to the party ahead of the 2024 elections. This man was also part of a review panel, along with other DA insiders, after the 2019 elections that evaluated the party's performance in the elections and recommended Mmusi Maimane should resign as party leader. He's also founder of the Millennium Trust, a non-profit organization that has the following media publications under it: Amabungane, Ground Up, Corruption Watch, and the Daily Maverick, amongst others. I mention this because Amabungane and Daily Maverick were the publications at the forefront of the Gupta-Zuma state capture shenanigans, along with News 24. And it just leaves me with one burning question. If Michiel Roux or any one of his Stellenbosch mates did some dodgy stuff, would it come to light the same way as it did the Guptas and Jacob Zuma? I feel like there's some major lines being blurred there. After Steinhoff, Capitec soon became a target by a group known as Viceroy that issued a report that Capitec is hiding unrecoverable loans and calling it a loan shark of a bank. But Capitec would deny this, saying that it was adequately capitalized to cover deposits. Viceroy was even fined 50 million rands for publishing false statements about Capitec. Julius Malema of the EFF has probably been the Stellenbosch Mafia's biggest critic, from as early as 2014 that I can find. You would refer to them as the Broader Bond, which is like a secret society of brothers, and would talk about the control that they have over the South African economy. He would even say that they exert influence through an only white and predominantly Afrikaner unit of the South African Revenue Service, SARS. But there's honestly no proof of that SARS thing, so it's hard to just take his word for it. In 2016, Julius Malema was apparently having problems with SARS, and he was publicly blaming Johan Rupert for his tax woes. He was also apparently told that if he could have a sit down with Rupert, all of his tax problems could be solved. Julius Malema would say that no matter what, he will never suck up to Rupert and the so-called Stellenbosch Mafia and would continue to trash talk Rupert publicly. Rupert had enough and apparently told Julius Malema through a mutual acquaintance that if he did not stop lying about him, he would tell the world that the EFF was funded by Rupert's money. I mean, Rupert was just being sarcastic here, right? Although Julius Malema would constantly insult Rupert, it is alleged that the former EFF's deputy president at the time, Floyd Shivambu, had close ties to Johan Rupert and even asked for Rupert's help to build a hospital in Limpopo. Floyd Shivambu denies all these allegations. There's also claims that Shivambu convinced Rupert to do an interview on Power FM to boost his image amongst the black population. An interview that went horribly wrong, as Rupert made some comments that appear racist, but if we had to put all of that aside, I feel like he did drop some knowledge gems throughout. The term white monopoly capital would gain a lot of traction during the whole Gupta state capture saga. It is said that the Guptas hired major UK firm Bal Pottinger as its PR company during this time. Bal Pottinger would apparently set up thousands of Twitter and Facebook accounts that would all talk about white monopoly capital and how much influence individuals like Johan Rupert and Harry Oppenheimer had over South Africa's economy, to the point of it becoming a trending topic on social media. Julius Malema would still be highly critical of the so-called Stellenbosch Mafia. He would also say President Cyril Ramaphosa is a product of the Ruperts, as well as saying Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan was running the country and Gordhan is controlled by the Stellenbosch Mafia, and will talk about how this group have journalists in its pockets. Andile Ngcama's controversial party, Black First, Land First, argue that Malema and Rupert have a relationship, but these claims are made without providing any actual evidence though. He only refers to Julius Malema's links to confessed cigarette smuggler Adriano Mazzotti of Corny Links Tobacco Company. Black First, Land First also took position of support to the Guptas and Zumas during the whole state capture shandies, but the explosive Gupta leaks revealed that he had close ties to the Guptas. This party has also attempted to occupy property and farms belonging to Rupert, which earned it court interdicts. Trade Union Federation COSATU made a statement in 2018 talking about how the Stellenbosch Mafia had influence over South African rugby. This article was mainly highlighting racism in the sport, but we know Rupert's Remgro Sports had stakes in English rugby club Saracens for 9 years, as I mentioned earlier, and a lot of prominent South African rugby stars played for the club, as well as its 50% stake in the Blue Bulls. We spoke about Steinhoff and its rugby sponsorship, but there's a deeper connection that Stellenbosch have with rugby. A man known as Roux worked at Stellenbosch University and even becoming chairperson in 2005, and eventually rose to the position of Senior Director of Finance. 2010, he was appointed CEO of the South African Rugby Union, but soon his past would catch up to him. Sometime in 2012, auditors realized something was wrong with the Stellenbosch University account, and KPMG was called in, and what they found shocked them. Roux, who was finance director at the university, was taking money from other departments and pumping it into the school rugby team, and it amounted to the tune of 37 million rand. The Hawks were even investigating this man, but the real issue was with the South African Rugby Union, who thought this man, who siphoned funds from a higher learning institution, was still perfect for his role as the head of South African Rugby, after he even got his contract extended in 2014. A man known as Dr. Server would also talk about how the Stellenbosch Mafia control most of the banks and how they use their influence to isolate and shut bank accounts of those who challenge them and those they do not like. To finish up this video, there's apparently a story that people always talk about in Stellenbosch. Legend has it in 2015, one of the town's richest men was enticed by one of his children to purchase the monster of a truck, the Mercedes-Benz G63 AMG 6x6, that had a price tag of over 13 million rand. When the model was spotted on South African roads in 2015, this super wealthy Stellenbosch man allegedly contacted the dealership, but was told there weren't any right-hand drive vehicles available for the South African market. So what this brute does next is so crazy. He called Mercedes-Benz CEO himself in Germany, Dieter Zetsche, and inquired about the G63 6x6. The Mercedes-Benz CEO and this businessman would strike a deal to deliver the G63 right-hand vehicles to South Africa, but only on one condition. The minimum order had to be 10 trucks at a price tag of $1 million each. This unnamed Stellenbosch man then got his fellow moguls in town to fill up the rest of the order, keeping 2 for himself. And these cars would be seen driving all over Stellenbosch. So, what's the final verdict on the Stellenbosch Mafia? Are they the heroes of South Africa's economy or the villains of the inequality that is plaguing this country? Well, it's complicated. On one hand, they've built empires that create jobs, spark innovation, and even put South Africa on the global map in industries like luxury goods and retail. But let's not ignore the elephant in the room. Their wealth and power sit in sharp contrast to the struggles of millions of ordinary South Africans. Many argue that their success reinforces a system of exclusivity and privilege, leaving the majority on the outside looking in. Big shout out to Peter Du Toit. This book is an amazing read and formed a significant part of my research for this video. Alright, that's all for today. If you made it through the 6,000 word essay, I truly appreciate you. I'm Lebogang. This is Mzansibizness. I'm so glad you could join us. I'm out. Peace.